Welcome to today's video. I'm standing out here on Renosterhoek farm, and the farmer has done a great job of maintaining his spekboom on these slopes and inherited a huge amount of degraded land long before his time. I don't know if you can see all the purple up there. It's members of the Russia, these annual mesums that are flowering purple in this hot midday sun. And all of this should have been dense thicket across there. And I'm here with colleagues from Stellenbosch, busy doing soil sampling for a really cool, interesting project that I want to share with you. I just want to give you an idea of the landscape. You can see there's a fence running up there, and that's what we should be looking at. This is a really steep slope, and everything should kind of look like this. Dense thicket, not incredibly open like that landscape there. But what today's video is about, again, about spekboom. You guys must be getting a little bit tired of hearing about spekboom, but there's a lot of cool things going on with this very unique plant. And one of the things is in a 2016 paper, they found this cool new photosynthetic pathway. It's not really a new photosynthetic pathway, it's a new source of photosynthesis. So you'll remember that the basis of photosynthesis is carbon gets sucked into the leaves, water, sunlight, and you get this chemical reaction that produces photosynthate, and that's effectively what powers life on the planet. And we usually have C3 plants, as that's what you learn in school, that during the day they suck up their carbon and photosynthesize during the day, and so their stomata are open. So one of the cool things about spekboom, I'm sure I've spoken about this before, is that they're CAM photosynthetic, or they're facultative CAM, so they can switch on this pathway called CAM photosynthesis. So they only open their stomata at night, and then they trap all the carbon in this something called crassulacean acid metabolism. So they trap their carbon at night, open stomata, trap their carbon at night, and then during the day they close their stomata, and they use that for photosynthesis. But there's another form of photosynthesis that this 2016 paper described, which was called alarm photosynthesis. Now in these cells, and in the cells of all plants, are these little crystals called calcium oxalate crystals. And no one's, why these cells are in the, why these little calcium oxalate crystals are in the cells, no one's really understood why. But the hypothesis put forward by the 2016 paper, and I'll put a link to it in the notes, is that these calcium oxalate crystals are a source of emergency carbon for a plant when it's hugely drought stressed, that it can break down those crystals. It can't open its stomata during the day, can't open its stomata during the night, for if it's a CAM photosynthesis, and so it opens its stomata. It doesn't open its stomata, but it rather breaks down these calcium oxalate crystals. And what that does is that it releases CO2, and the plants can use that as an emergency source of CO2 to kind of like keep the photosynthesis and produce photosynthate. So it's kind of a kind of emergency funds for the plant to call upon to get CO2. And I'm working on a really fascinating project with Kathy Clark, Michelle Francis, and a bunch of colleagues on something called the carbonate oxalate pathway, which means taking these calcium oxalate crystals and producing calcium carbonate. And calcium carbonate's pretty, you might recognize the name, that's limestone. And so that's pretty weird to think of a crystal in a leaf ending up becoming a part of the geology, because it'll dissolve down into the soil and form lenses of calcium carbonate. And the cool thing about that is that that's a long-term storage of carbon.
And what we think is happening is that this whole landscape, you see all of the spekboom out there, we think they're incredibly rich in calcium oxalate crystals and are actually increasing calcium carbonates in these landscapes. Now, the prevailing thinking about calcium carbonates in landscape is that they're all from geological formations and they're just reworked. So what I mean by that is that you get like ocean limestones forming, so from seashells, and then so that'll form somewhere in this landscape. Once it was a marine origin, millions upon millions of years ago, and if we find calcium carbonate down here, then it's a redistribution, a redissolution of that calcium carbonate from a limestone origin all the way to over here. What's cool about where I'm on now is I'm on shales that are aligned to the Cape supergroup, which are notorious for not having carbonates. So there shouldn't be any carbonates in this landscape. And so where does the calcium oxalate come from if it's not from being uptaken by the roots from some form of a broken down calcium carbonate? Well, it would be in the form of calcium in dust, so it either could break down from the geology. There's probably not much in this geology of calcium, but we do get dust from the Karoo. I'm facing north here, and you get these huge dust storms that can blow across the country and bring dust, and that can rain down here. And then the calcium gets uptaken by the plant, and the plant then sucks in CO2 from the atmosphere, binds it with that calcium, and forms these calcium oxalate crystals. And then when the leaves fall on the ground, or the branches break down and fall on the ground, there are bacteria and termites and things that break them down that effectively end up producing calcite, so calcium carbonates. And that's what we're here to test. And so we're going to be looking through this landscape for the presence of calcium carbonates, and we found quite a bit. So this is the quite cool thing that we found. I don't know if you can notice that there's a kind of a whitish coloration there. And what I've got here is a dilute 10% hydrochloric acid. Let's get this focused. And calcium carbonates fizz when they come into contact with acid. Can you see the fizzing? You see all that fizzing? This is a layer of calcium carbonate. Shouldn't be in this landscape. And the other thing that's really exciting is that I go and take this spot where these things were. Now I'm going to clear this top layer of soil off. So if this was redissolution from the underlying geology, there should be calcium carbonate just underneath it, because it should be coming up from underneath. So I've now cleared that. I'm now hitting. It's still fizzing. I don't think I went down enough. I don't think I did enough clearing. Sorry about that, because I tested this just now. Okay, so I've just cleared the top layer. I think I was still on the top layer. Okay. Not fizzing nearly as much. There was a tiny bit of fizz there, I think. There, that definitely didn't fizz. None of that fizzed. Problem is I need to make sure that I don't get any of this top stuff in there. Let me just do that again, just to really convince you that, let's find another spot, that there's no calcium carbonate in the underlying soils. And I mean, I'm not going very deep at all. Okay, so oh, so there's a little animal burrow. Oh, shame, I dug up some kind of animal burrow. So hopefully now I've cleared this and I'm just looking at the underlying soils. Okay, let's have a look there. There is no fizzing there whatsoever. No fizzing. Then we go back up to this white patch there. That's the fizzing that I'm talking about. That's a chemical reaction with hydrochloric acid. So where is this calcium carbonate coming from? Well, the really cool thing is I'm downslope from that thicket. Come on, focus please. I'm downslope from that dense thicket, and so the idea is that we're getting heavy rainfall that's washing calcium carbonate. So we had calcium oxalate crystals that have gone through two chemical reactions to form calcite, calcium carbonate, and that this heavy rain has washed it down here and washed it as kind of a surface erosion all the way down here, and it's only on the surface. So there was this big buildup of calcite because we've been in a drought and very little rainfall events, and we've just had, in the last 6 months, we've had 3 or 4 really big rainfall events. We've had a very good year. The drought has finally broken, and these big rainfall events have washed the this calcite down here, and then it's then been stuck on the top of the surface. And then the very interesting thing is that wherever you get a channel, so there's a little channel, you don't get that white buildup, which is suggesting that there was enough water going down there that it actually got washed all the way down the landscape. And so we wouldn't have found it. It's just that there were such big rains that it formed over the microtopography, and which evaporated off, and the calcite then got left here. So what I'm going to do is go in under there, and we're going to go look for calcium carbonates in the soils. Not in the soils, in the thicket leaf litter, and I'll show you what the leaf litter looks like, and we can see whether I can demonstrate that calcium carbonate, which in these landscapes is generally, just to remind you, it's always thought of coming from a geological source and then getting shifted around the landscape by water. So, imagine there was a limestone section there that water would dissolve it and move up or move down the landscape and get shifted by groundwater and then get evaporated out there. So that's the idea, that it gets shifted around the landscape kind of underground. But yeah, we're saying that the calcium carbonate that I've just picked up, that I've just shown you, is forming because these plants have taken calcium dust, carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere, formed calcium oxalate crystals for this alarm photosynthesis. That's then fallen, the leaf litter there has then fallen down, been degraded, gone through these two chemical processes with fancy name, oxalotrophic bacteria, because they eat these calcium carbonates, and then forming these calcites. So yes, let's go and have a look and see whether I can demonstrate that that spekboom in particular and these thickets are rich in calcium carbonates. Okay, I'm now well ensconced in a thicket clump, and when you want to get underneath there into the leaf litter, so we're looking for some really old material. I think that'll do over there. Yeah, it's feeling very, very light. Remember, the calcium carbonate needs to go, it's quite a lot of biological stuff it needs to go through. So let's see. Oh, I've got the lid on there. Take the lid off. Okay, no fizzing there. Just going to try and open this up a little bit. Sorry, don't have enough hands here. So this is an old piece of stem that's been eaten out, probably hollowed out by termites and a bunch of other things. Ah, there we go. We got ourselves some fizz. So that's calcium carbonate inside this stem. Lots of it. So this is what's getting washed out by the rainwater and onto those slopes. I mean, that's a lot of fizzing going on there. I can actually hear it. I don't know if you can hear it. The microphone might be a bit far away. And I don't have an extra hand to take the microphone off. So not everything's going to fizz like that. Let me grab something else here. It's called like highly variable. So like it needs to be really old pieces. So I think this is quite light, but I don't think it's been eaten. Oh, I really need an extra hand. Why? Evolution, give me an extra. Let's try and put some here. So this hasn't been degraded. All the calcium oxalate is probably still in calcium oxalate form, and you can see that water droplet there. You see it there? There's no fizz whatsoever in there. That's because this only fizzes with calcium carbonates, and that only forms after 2 chemical steps away from calcium oxalate. So it's only when it has gone through those 2, and often those are biologically driven by those oxalate bacteria. So oxalate bacteria haven't managed to get into this yet. Let's see what else. And, you know, let's see if I dare do this. I don't advise doing this because without gloves, because there are a lot of things that I've had scorpions, and we had a really interesting and nasty looking spider today. Look, well, nasty looking but beautiful. So down to that. If I just drop that, see, there's no fizz going on in that soil. That's just dropping. That's not actually fizzing there, because that hasn't broken down enough. But eventually that will break down. Eventually that will break down and form that calcite that I just showed you a moment ago. And then what will happen is that calcite will get washed down the soil, into the soil, and get trapped as calcium carbonate, and then that is carbon dioxide that's been sucked in and formed calcium oxalate crystals in both the leaves and the stems. They get converted via the calcium oxalate pathway to calcium carbonate, and then they go down into the soils, and if you don't degrade your thicket, then you've then stored that calcite in a geologically stable form. So the paper first describing this was something along the lines of converting sunlight into stone, because the carbon dioxide and sunlight and photosynthesis, carbon dioxide and gets trapped as calcium oxalate crystals for the purpose of photosynthesis, but if it doesn't get used and the stem or the leaves fall off, then they get eaten by the microbes, formed into calcium carbonate, and get trapped into the system. Anyway, very long-winded but very, very cool story, and hoping to really get to the bottom of it. Is this process happening across this entire landscape? So across over there we've got the calcium oxalate pathway being, you know, very, very successful undergoing, because we've got a lot of the spekboom in there with phytomass, and we've got the bacteria doing it. And then in these degraded areas, all that calcium carbonate might have been washed out and leached out because of and become mobile again because of the heavy rains, and also the process has effectively come to a halt because there's no spekboom and other calcium oxalate rich plants in this landscape. Anyway, it's the first kind of introductory thoughts into this very cool, neat idea, and we're getting a lot of very good preliminary evidence. It is a hypothesis, and we will still need to do a lot more work, and I look forward to reporting our final results to you. Alrighty, cheerio.